The wind on Histara did not just blow. It scoured. It carried the taste of ozone and ancient rust, a gritty reminder that this planet was less of a home and more of a graveyard for ships that had flown too far and people who wished to be forgotten. Darian Holt wiped a smear of grease from his cheek, leaving a darker streak against his pale skin. He lay on his back beneath the hull of a transport skiff that had seen better centuries. The metal above him groaned a sympathetic vibration to the ache in his lower back. "Hand me the hydrospanner, Mira," Darian called out, his voice muffled by the undercarriage. A small hand, stained with charcoal and bright blue chalk, thrust the tool into his field of vision. "It is not a hydrospanner, Dad. It is the scepter of power." Darian took the tool, suppressing a smile, as he tightened a loose coupling on the fuel intake. "Right, the scepter. My mistake. Just do not use the scepter to hit the cat again." "It was an accident," Mira protested, from where she sat cross-legged on the dusty hangar floor. "Besides, Jinx started it." Darian slid out from under the ship, blinking against the harsh, white light of the Hesteran noon suns, filtering through the holes in the hangar roof. He sat up and looked at his daughter. Mira was 8 years old, though her eyes often held the weight of someone twice her age. Currently, she was engrossed in her masterpiece. She held a round shield made of scrap wood, sanded smooth by Darian's own hands 2 years ago. She was covering the surface with intricate drawings of beasts that looked like crossbreeds between dragons and fluffy dogs. "Are we eating protein paste again tonight?" Mira asked, without looking up her tongue, poking out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. "Because if we are, I think I might just run away and join the circus. Jonas says there is a circus in the Gamma sector." "Jonas talks too much," Darian said, standing and wiping his hands on a rag that was dirtier than his trousers. "And for your information, tonight is a feast. I made enough credits on this repair job to buy actual vegetables. Maybe even a tuber." Mira looked up, her eyes widening. "A tuber, a whole one?" "Do not get greedy," Darian teased, ruffling her hair, which sent a cloud of dust into the air. "Come on, pack up your shield. We are going to the market." Mira scrambled up, clutching the wooden shield to her chest like a lifeline. Darian watched her, and for a second the playful light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a cold, calculating scan of the hangar entrance. He checked the perimeter. Clear. He checked the sightlines. Clear. "Dad," Darian snapped back to the present. "I am ready. Let us go." The walk to the settlement's market district was an assault on the senses. Histara was a border world, a place where the laws of the central systems were treated as mild suggestions rather than rules. The air smelled of roasting meat of dubious origin, engine coolant, and unwashed bodies. Species from a dozen systems mingled here. Tall, chitinous insectoids clicked their mandibles at merchants, while squat, fur-covered miners argued over the price of oxygen filters. Darian moved through the crowd with a fluidity that contradicted his rugged mercenary appearance. He kept Mira on his left side, away from the flow of traffic, his body angled slightly to shield her. His eyes did not rest. He cataloged threats automatically. A heavy lifter drone hovering too low. A group of mercenaries with plasma rifles slung too loosely over their shoulders. A hooded figure moving against the flow of the crowd. "You are doing it again," Mira whispered, tugging on his sleeve. "Doing what?" "Acting like a soldier. You are walking like you expect the ground to explode." Darian forced his shoulders to relax. He offered her a crooked grin. "Just checking for potholes, sweetheart. I do not want you to trip and scratch that masterpiece of a shield." "It is enchanted," Mira said solemnly. "It cannot scratch." "Right. Enchanted." They turned a corner into the main plaza, a sprawling open space dominated by a massive defunct terraforming tower that now served as a clock tower. The market was denser here. "Hey, Holt," Darian winced. He knew that voice. He turned to see Jonas Pike leaning against a stack of crates, spinning a magnetic wrench around his finger. Jonas was a pilot who held his ship together with wire and profanity, a man whose definition of safety was merely not exploding immediately. "Jonas," Darian greeted him, not stopping. "We are busy, tuber shopping." Jonas fell into step beside them, his oil-stained flight suit, smelling of high-grade fuel. "Big spender. Listen, did you hear the news? The chatter on the subfrequency is wild." "I do not listen to chatter, Jonas. It gives me a headache." "You should listen to this." Jonas lowered his voice, leaning in conspiratorially. "General Kaela Serra is on Histara." Darian stopped. The name hit him like a physical blow, though he kept his face neutral. Kaela Serra, the Iron Lily of the Illyri. A war hero to her people, a terrifying myth to her enemies. "Why would an Illyri general be on a dustball like this?" Darian asked, keeping his tone dismissive. "Rumor is she is hunting something. Or hiding something." Jonas wagged his eyebrows. "And get this, she brought the kid. The little girl. Talk about a single mother's burden, right? A general and a mom. I heard she cuts the crusts off sandwiches with a laser dagger." "Go fix your thrusters, Jonas," Darian said, steering Mira away. "Before your ship falls apart in the dock and crushes my skiff." "You are no fun, Holt. No fun at all," Jonas called after them. Darian walked faster, his heart rate climbing a fraction. An Illyri general meant attention. Attention meant trouble. And trouble was the one thing Darian had spent the last 5 years running from. He needed to get the food and get back to the hangar. Lock the doors. Maybe leave the planet tonight. "Dad, you are squeezing my hand," Mira said quietly. Darian released his grip immediately. "Sorry, look, fruit stall. Let us find that tuber." They approached a large stall, canopied by colorful synthetic fabric. The vendor, a 4-armed Tellarite, looked exasperated. Standing in front of him was a woman who could only be Kaela Serra. She was imposing even without armor. She wore a long hooded cloak that failed to hide the metallic sheen of her skin, a characteristic of the Illyri, or the subtle bioluminescent patterns that traced her jawline. She stood with a posture so rigid she looked like she might shatter if she bent. Beside her was a girl roughly Mira's age, looking bored and kicking at the dust. "I do not understand," Kaela was saying, her voice a smooth, commanding alto that cut through the market noise. "The sign says 3 credits. I have inspected the structural integrity of this fruit. It has bruises. Efficiency demands a price reduction. 2 credits is the logical exchange." The vendor threw 2 of his 4 hands up. "Lady, it is a fruit, not a starship part. It is 3 credits. Take it or leave it." "Your negotiation tactics are illogical," Kaela stated flatly. "I am prepared to offer 2 credits and a favorable recommendation of your stall to my associates." The little girl beside her sighed loudly. "Mother, please. Just pay the 3 credits. I am hungry." Mira, never one to be shy, stepped forward before Darian could stop her. She looked at the Illyri girl. "Hi, I am Mira. Is your mom fighting the fruit man?" The Illyri girl looked at Mira, her eyes a startling shade of violet. "She is negotiating. She says never to accept the first terms of engagement." Mira giggled. "My dad says never to buy from the guy with the eye patch, but he always does." Kaela turned her gaze, locking onto Darian. Her eyes were gold, sharp as cut glass. She scanned him in a second threat assessment, Darian realized. She looked at his boots, his stance, the way his hand hovered near his belt. She lingered on the grease on his face, and for a moment, the intensity faded into something akin to confusion. "Your daughter," Kaela said, "has a very direct approach." "She takes after her mother," Darian lied smoothly. He stepped up, placing 3 credits on the counter. "Give the lady the fruit, and give us 2 tubers, the non-bruised ones." The vendor grumbled, but took the money. Kaela looked at the fruit in her hand, then at Darian. "I did not require assistance. I had him on the verge of capitulation." "You were terrifying him," Darian corrected gently. And your daughter looked like she was about to fall asleep standing up. Sometimes in general time is worth more than a credit. Kayla stiffened at the title. You know who I am. Hard not to. Darian gestured to her glowing skin. Not many Illyri shop for groceries in the Outer Rim. Keep your hood up if you want to stay low. Kayla pulled her hood forward, looking slightly chastised. Thank you. I am not accustomed to civilian logistics. Clearly, Darian said. He looked down. Mira and the Illyri girl, Talia, if the rumors were true, were already crouching in the dirt. Mira was showing Talia her shield. It protects against everything, Mira explained, pointing to a dragon drawing. This one eats lasers, and this one eats sadness. Talia ran a finger over the rough wood. It is wood. A plasma bolt would incinerate it in 0.4 seconds. Mira shook her head. Not if you hold it right. Dad showed me. You have to stand like this. Mira demonstrated, planting her feet wide and angling the shield. See deflection angle. Kayla watched them, her expression softening in a way that made her look 10 years younger. Your daughter understands tactical positioning. She thinks it is a game, Darian said, his voice tight. I intend to keep it that way. Talia has been trained since she could walk, Kayla murmured almost to herself. She knows the melting point of Durasteel, but she has never drawn a picture of a dragon. For a moment, the bustling market faded. Darian looked at this woman, a general, a warrior, a legend, and saw the exhausted mother beneath. He saw the way her hand hovered near Talia's shoulder, not touching, but ready to grab. He knew that hover. He did it every day. Why don't you let them play for a minute? Darian suggested, against his better judgment. While you eat your structural integrity fruit, Kayla hesitated, then nodded. She took a bite of the fruit, grimacing slightly at the texture. Acceptable. The two girls were laughing now. Mira was teaching Talia how to hide behind the small shield. Darian stepped in, correcting Talia's stance instinctively. Knees bent, kid. Lower your center of gravity. If the blast hits high, you pivot. If it hits low, you drop. Like this. He guided Talia's small shoulders. The child was solid, muscular for her age, but she felt fragile under his hands. She looked up at him, trusting. Like this? Talia asked. Perfect, Darian smiled. Kayla watched Darian interact with her daughter. Surprise flickered across her face. Most human men found Illyri children unsettling due to the faint static charge their skin emitted. Darian handled Talia as if she were made of precious glass that he was terrified of breaking, yet he taught her like a soldier. You have good instincts, Kayla said. I watch a lot of action vids, Darian deflected, standing up and wiping his hands. And then the world stopped. It did not happen with a sound, but with a silence. The ambient noise of the market, the shouting vendors, the hum of engines, the music simply cut out, swallowed by a sudden oppressive pressure. The sunlight turned sickly gray. The air temperature plummeted 20 degrees in a single heartbeat. Darian's breath hitched. He knew this feeling. It was the taste of copper in his mouth, the static raising the hair on his arms. Talia, Kayla shouted, her voice snapping from mother to commander instantly. On the rooftops surrounding the plaza, shadows coalesced. They were not natural shadows. They condensed into humanoid shapes, 21 of them. They wore masks of smooth, featureless obsidian. Their armor was segmented and dark, drinking in the light. In their hands they held swords, long, elegant blades that hummed with a violet, discordant frequency. The 21 blades. The legends whispered that they were ghosts. Darian knew they were worse. They were precision instruments of slaughter. Get down! Darian roared, lunging toward Mira. The blades moved in unison, a single organism with 21 limbs. They leapt from the rooftops, ignoring the screaming civilians, ignoring the stalls. They converged on one point. Talia. The little girl froze, her eyes wide, the wooden shield dangling from her hand. She scrambled backward, her boot, slipping on a discarded piece of fruit. She fell hard onto the dusty cobblestones. "Mother!" Talia screamed. Kaela was moving a blur of motion. She drew a collapsible energy pike from beneath her cloak, extending it with a snap. But she was 10 meters away. The lead blade was already airborne, descending upon Talia, the violet sword raised for a killing strike. Mira was closer. Mira threw herself toward the fallen girl, holding up her tiny wooden shield. Time seemed to liquefy for Darien. He saw the scene with agonizing clarity. The descending sword that would slice through the wood, through Mira, through Talia. He saw Kayla's desperate, outstretched hand too far away to save them. He saw the failure of his past overlaying the present, the fire, the screams, the broken promise. Not again. The thought was not a word. It was a scream in his soul. Darien did not run. He exploded into motion. He dropped the bag of tubers. He threw himself into the space between the girls and the falling death. He did not reach for a weapon. He had sworn never to use the power again. He had buried the warden deep inside, drowned him in grease and cheap liquor. But the warden did not care about promises. The warden only cared about the shield. Darien slammed his knees into the dirt, sliding between the girls and the attacker. He threw his arms out, wide palms, facing the sky, his chest exposed. "Hold." The command tore through his neural pathways. The tattoo on his left forearm, a complex geometric weave of scars he usually kept hidden, burst into blinding white light. A sound like a thunderclap shattered the silence. From Darien's outstretched hands, a dome of translucent, hexagonal energy erupted. It was not a flicker. It was a fortress. It expanded instantly, encompassing himself, Mira, and Talia. The lead blade sword crashed into the energy barrier. Boom! Sparks of violet and gold showered down like fireworks. The sword rebounded with a screech of tortured physics. The blade was thrown backward by the recoil, landing in a crouch. The crowd gasped. Kaela skidded to a halt, her eyes wide with shock. She stared at Darien. The energy dome shimmered around him, humming, with a deep, resonant bass note that vibrated in the chest of everyone in the plaza. Darien gritted his teeth, sweat instantly popping on his forehead. The strain was immense. It felt like holding up a collapsing building with his mind. "Kayla!" he roared, his voice strained. "Move!" Kayla snapped out of her shock. She was a general. She recognized a tactical advantage when she saw one. "A leery guard." "To me," she commanded, her voice amplified by her armor's vocalizer. She did not retreat. She used Darien's shield as an anchor. She leaped onto the top of the energy dome. The field held her weight solid as stone, and launched herself at the blades. "You dare threaten my blood!" Kaela screamed, her energy pike blazing. The plaza erupted into chaos. Ellyri soldiers disguised in the crowd shed their cloaks and joined the fray. But the 21 blades were relentless. They hammered against Darien's shield. Clang, clang, clang. Each hit sent a shockwave through Darien's nervous system. His nose began to bleed. His vision blurred at the edges. Inside the dome, Mira and Talia huddled together. Talia stared at Darien's back, at the glowing patterns now spreading up his neck, illuminating his skin. "Is this magic?" Talia whispered. "No," Mira said, clutching her wooden shield, tears streaking her face. "That is my dad." 3 blades coordinated their strike. They raised their swords and brought them down simultaneously on the apex of the dome. The impact was catastrophic. Darien screamed as the feedback loop overloaded his neural connectors. The shield held it had to hold, but the force was transmitted directly into his body. He felt a rib crack. The world tilted sideways. "General," Darien gasped, blood spraying from his lips. "I cannot hold forever." Kayla landed in front of the shield, decapitating a blade with a savage swing of her pike. She looked back at him, and for the first time there was fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for the man who was bleeding out to save her child. "Hold, Warden!" she shouted. "Just one more minute." She raised her hand to the sky. Sky Temple Orbital Strike. Designation Alpha Zero now. A beam of pure white light punched through the clouds. It struck the center of the plaza, blasting the remaining blades backward. The shockwave rattled the teeth of everyone present. The blades, realizing the tide had turned, dissolved back into shadows, retreating into the labyrinthine alleys of the market with supernatural speed. The threat vanished as quickly as it had arrived. Darian watched the last shadow disappear. The adrenaline that had sustained the shield evaporated. The glowing hexagon faded, collapsing into motes of light. He fell forward. His face hit the dirt. The sounds of the market came rushing back, screams, sirens, the crying of children. He felt small hands on him. "Dad, Dad!" He tried to push himself up, but his limbs were lead. He rolled onto his back. The twin suns of Hestara were spinning. A face appeared above him. Kayla Sarah. Her helmet was gone. Her hair was wild. She was terrifyingly beautiful and terrified. She knelt beside him, ignoring the dirt on her knees. She placed a hand on his chest. Her skin felt cool, electric. "Stay with me," she ordered. It was the voice of someone used to being obeyed. "My daughter," Darian wheezed. "She is safe. Talia is holding her." "Look." Darian forced his eyes to track. He saw Mira and Talia clinging to each other, surrounded by a ring of Illyri guards. Mira was safe. "Good," Darian whispered. "Did I save the tubers?" "What?" Kayla blinked, confusion warring with concern. "The tubers." "You are delirious," Kayla said. She looked up at her medics, who were rushing in. "Get him stabilized. If he dies, I will court-martial the lot of you." "I am just a mechanic," Darian mumbled, the darkness closing in on his peripheral vision. "You are a warden," Kayla said softly, her voice filled with awe and accusation. "And you are coming with us," Darian wanted to argue. He wanted to say he was retired. He wanted to say he quit. But the blackness swallowed him whole, and he knew no more. Consciousness returned, not like a sunrise, but like a reboot sequence. First came the hum, a low, harmonious vibration that permeated the air. Then came the smell, clean, sterile smelling of ozone and crushed lilies. Darian opened his eyes. He was not in his dusty room above the hangar. He was not in a med bay. He was lying on a floating platform covered in white silk. The ceiling above him was a single, massive pane of crystal, revealing the starry void of space. He sat up, gasping, as his headache spiked. He clutched his temple. He was wearing a loose tunic of shimmering white fabric. His old clothes, his grease-stained trousers were gone. "Easy," a deep voice rumbled. Darian swung his legs off the platform. He was in a vast, circular chamber. The walls were made of white marble veined with gold. Standing at the foot of the platform was a man who radiated power. He was tall, elderly, but unbent, with a mane of silver hair and skin that shone like polished bronze. He wore robes of deep crimson and gold. Emperor Orion Sera, the ruler of the Illyri Dominion. To his right stood Kayla. She was no longer in her dusty cloak. She wore ceremonial armor of silver and blue, her helmet tucked under her arm. She looked exhausted, but she stood at attention. And to the left, Mira. Darian scrambled off the platform, stumbling slightly. Mira was curled up on a plush velvet bench asleep. Her wooden shield was propped up against her knees. She looked unharmed, clean, fed. Darian let out a breath he felt he had been holding for 5 years. He turned to the Emperor and Kayla. He instinctively adopted a defensive stance, putting himself between the royals and his daughter. "Where am I?" Darian demanded. "And why is my daughter here?" "You are in the Sky Temple," Emperor Orion said. His voice was not angry. It was heavy with gravity. "You have been unconscious for 3 days, Darian Holt." 3 days, Darian swore under his breath. "I need a ship. We are leaving." "You are not leaving," the Emperor said calmly. Darian narrowed his eyes. "Am I a prisoner?" "No," Kayla stepped forward. You are a guest, a hero. You saved my daughter's life. You saved Mira. The medical scans confirmed the energy signature. You are a warden. We thought your kind was extinct. I am just a guy who got lucky with a shield generator, Darian lied, though he knew it was pointless. We stripped you to put you in the healing tank, Kayla said, her cheeks coloring slightly. We saw the marks. The brand of the order. Do not insult my intelligence, Holt. Darian crossed his arms. Fine. I was a warden, past tense. I retired. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a repair shop to run. The 21 Blades are hunting Talia, the Emperor interrupted. And now, because of the energy resonance you created during the battle, they are hunting your daughter as well. They have marked both children. Darian froze. The blood drained from his face. What did you say? The unique signature of a warden's shield combined with the Illyri biofield created a beacon. Elder Thalen, a stooped figure Darian hadn't noticed in the shadows, stepped forward. Sarath knows you are alive. He knows the children are potent. He will not stop. Darian looked at Mira sleeping peacefully. The nightmare he had run from had found him. I can hide her, Darian said desperately. I have done it before. Not from the Blades, Kayla said softly. Not anymore. You need an army, Darian. And I have one, Emperor Orion boomed. He stepped closer, his golden eyes locking onto Darian's. I owe you a life debt, human. By the laws of the Illyri, a life debt to the royal bloodline must be repaid with the highest honor. Darian felt a cold pit open in his stomach. I do not want money. I do not want honor. I just want safety. Precisely, the Emperor nodded. Safety requires legitimacy. It requires that you be under the absolute protection of the House of Sarah. Not as a mercenary, not as a guest. The Emperor took a breath, expanding his chest. He looked at Kayla, then back to Darian. Therefore I have made a decision, to bind your fate to ours, to ensure that every spear and ship in the Illyri fleet stands between those children and the darkness. Darian looked at Kayla. She looked as confused as he was. Father, Kayla asked cautiously. What are you proposing? Emperor Orion raised his hand. I am not proposing, General. I am decreeing. He pointed a finger at Darian. From this moment forth, by the ancient rites of the lifeblood, Darian Holt is declared the groom of Kayla Sarah. The silence of the Sky Temple was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. Darian Holt sat on the edge of the floating medical platform, his boots dangling over the pristine white marble floor. His head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, a hangover from channeling more energy in 3 minutes than he had in 5 years. He looked to his left. Mira was curled on a velvet bench, her breathing deep and even. Her hand was clamped around the handle of her wooden shield so tightly that her knuckles were white. Seeing that grip broke something inside Darian's chest, and then knit it back together stronger, but scar tissue stiff. He looked to his right. The audience was less comforting. Emperor Orion Sarah stood with the stillness of a statue, his bronze skin glowing faintly under the crystal dome of the ceiling. Beside him, General Kayla Sarah looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. She had traded her dusty cloak for formal armor that gleamed with silver and azure, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked at Darian, then at the floor, then at the Emperor, her jaw set in a line of grim determination. The groom of Kayla Sarah, Darian repeated the words, tasting like ash and bad comedy in his mouth. He let out a short, incredulous laugh that echoed too loudly in the vast chamber. I think the energy feedback fried my universal translator, because it sounded like you just said I am getting married. Your translator is functioning within optimal parameters, Emperor Orion said. His voice was deep, resonating in the crystal walls. I have declared it. It is written in the Starlight Codex. It is done. Darian slid off the platform. His legs felt like jelly, but he forced them to hold his weight. He walked over to Mira, placing a protective hand on her sleeping shoulder before turning to face the most powerful being in the sector. "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Darien said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low, "I am not a citizen of the Illyri Dominion. I am a human. I am a freelancer. And I am definitely not anyone's groom. I saved your granddaughter because she is a kid, not because I was looking to marry into royalty. No offense, General." Kella's head snapped up, her golden eyes flashing. "Do not presume I desire this Holt. A human consort. It would be a diplomatic nightmare. You live for barely a century. You are fragile. Your customs are chaotic." "Fragile," Darien raised an eyebrow. "I seem to recall my fragile shield was the only thing stopping your daughter from being turned into ribbons." "That is enough," the Emperor commanded. He did not shout, but the authority in his tone silenced the room instantly. He stepped down from the dais, his robes shifting like liquid blood. "This is not a matter of romance, Darien Holt. Nor is it a matter of preference. It is a matter of survival." A figure emerged from the shadows behind the throne. It was Elder Thalon, the oldest Illyri Darien had ever seen. His skin had lost its metallic sheen and looked like cracked parchment. He leaned on a staff made of twisted black glass. "Explain it to him, Thalon," the Emperor said wearily. "He thinks like a mercenary. Give him the cost breakdown." Thalon hobbled forward, his milky eyes fixing on Darien. "The 21 blades are not merely assassins, Master Warden. They are energetic parasites. When you deployed your shield in the market, you did not just deflect their blow. You created a resonance frequency, a link." Darien felt a cold sweat prickle on his neck. "What kind of link?" "They have tasted the specific energy signature of your Warden barriers," Thalon rasped. "And they have tasted the biological signature of the child Talia. But because your daughter Mira was within the sphere of influence holding a conduit object, that wooden shield she clings to, she is now part of the triad." Darien stepped back, placing his body fully between Mira and the Illyri. "You are saying they are hunting my daughter." "I am saying," Thalon continued, "that to the blades there is no difference between Talia and Mira anymore. They are two halves of the same target. Sarath Kale will not stop until he has extinguished both lights to shatter the shield permanently." Darien looked at Kayla. The general nodded slowly, her face pale. "Our intelligence confirms it. The blades have already dispatched hunter-seekers to the Histara system. If you leave this temple, if you try to run with Mira, you will be dead within 2 standard days." "Then I will fight them," Darien said, though his voice lacked conviction. He knew what the blades were. He knew he could not fight 21 of them alone. "You will die," Emperor Orion stated flatly. "And your daughter will die. And my granddaughter will die. I cannot allow that." The Emperor walked over to the window, looking out at the swirling nebula that cradled the Sky Temple. "The Illyri military is bound by the Iron Laws," Orion set his back to them. "I cannot deploy the Royal Vanguard to protect a human civilian and his child. The Council would revolt. They would see it as a misuse of resources for a foreign entity. I can send a squad, perhaps, but a squad will not stop Sarath." He turned back his face hard. "But if you are family," Orion said, "if you are bound by the rights of union to the House of Sera, then you are not a foreigner. Mira becomes a ward of the throne. An attack on her becomes an attack on the Empire itself. I can mobilize the entire Third Fleet to shield a member of the royal household." Darien stared at him. The logic was cold, political, and terrifyingly sound. It was a trap, but it was a trap designed to keep them alive. "So that is it?" Darien asked, gesturing vaguely. "I sign a paper, put on a fancy ring, and I get an army." "It is not a paper," Kayla said, her voice tight. "It is a life bond. In the eyes of my people, it is absolute. If you accept, you are under my protection, and I am under yours. And if I refuse, then I will give you a fast ship and a bag of credits," the Emperor said honestly, "and I will mourn you when the report of your death arrives." The room fell into silence again. Darian looked at Mira. She mumbled something in her sleep and shifted the wooden shield clattering against the bench. He remembered the market, the fear in her eyes, the way the blade had come down. He looked at Kyla. She stood rigid, a warrior, waiting for a killing blow. She hated this. She hated needing help. She hated being used as a political pawn by her father. Darian understood that. He understood hate. "I have conditions," Darian said. Kyla blinked. "Conditions. You are in no position to negotiate human." "I am the guy with the shield," Darian countered. Condition 1. "This is a job. I am a mercenary. I am protecting a client. We play the part, we say the lines, but behind closed doors. I am just the bodyguard. Do not expect me to attend tea parties or wear silk robes." The Emperor's lips quirked upward, a ghost of a smile. "Granted." Condition 2. Darian held up a second finger. "Mira stays with me, always. No boarding schools, no safe houses where I cannot see her. Where I go, she goes." "Agreed," Kayla said immediately. "I would demand the same for Talia." Condition 3. Darian looked straight at the Emperor. "We are not just hiding. We are hunting. I am not going to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. We use your fleet. We find Serath and we end this. Once the blades are gone, the marriage is dissolved. Void and null." Elder Thalen cleared his throat. "Divorce is rare among the Aeleri. It requires a great deal of paperwork." "I am good at paperwork," Darian lied. "Do we have a deal?" Kella stepped forward. She extended her hand. Her forearm was covered in the silver gauntlet of her armor. "For the children," she said. Darian grasped her forearm, his human hand pale against her metallic skin. "For the children." Just as their hands clasped the crystal floor beneath them, shuddered. A deep, groaning sound reverberated through the hull of the Sky Temple, like a submarine diving too deep. The lights in the chamber flickered and turned a warning red. Status. Emperor Orion barked, his demeanor shifting instantly from diplomat to warlord. A holographic screen materialized in the air. An Aeleri officer, her face bloodied, appeared. "Your Majesty, perimeter breach. We have multiple atmospheric anomalies forming at Vector 9. It is an energy storm Category 5. But it is steering itself." "The blades," Kaela asked, her hand already moving to the hilt of her energy sword. "Negative, General," the officer shouted over the sound of explosions. "It is the wildlife. The energy surge from the planet's surface must have agitated the sky beasts. We have a swarm of void eels incoming. They are feeding on the shield grid." Darian felt the vibration travel up his boots. Void eels. Massive serpentine creatures of pure bioelectricity that lived in the upper ionosphere. They were usually peaceful, feeding on static discharges. But if they were attacking the temple, something had driven them mad. "Serath," Darian growled. "He is flushing us out." He stirred up the nest. "My daughter," Kella shouted, turning to run towards the door. "Talia is in the training garden." "Mira is right here," Darian said, scoping up his sleeping daughter. She woke with a start, eyes wide. "Dad, is it the circus?" Mira asked groggily. "No, sweetheart. Just some turbulence," Darian said, holding her tight against his chest. He looked at Kaela. "Go to Talia. I will get Mira to the safe room." "There is no safe room," the Emperor roared, as a massive impact shook the temple. Through the crystal ceiling, Darian saw a shape, a gargantuan translucent eel, easily 300 meters long, glowing with angry blue light, slam into the outer barrier. The force of it cracked the energy field. "The shielding grid is failing. If the eels breach the hull, they will drain the life support reserves in minutes." "They are attracted to energy," Darian realized. "The shield grid is a dinner bell. We have to shut it down." "If we shut down the shields, the atmosphere vents into space," Thalen pointed out, his voice trembling. Not if we have a replacement. Kayla looked at Darian. Her eyes were pleading. A localized barrier, covering the breaches until the backup generators cycle. Darian looked at the ceiling. The void eel was coiling for another strike. Behind it, he could see dozens more swarming like angry worms in a corpse. I need to get to the main atrium, Darian, said the soldier in him taking over. That is the central nexus, right? Yes, Kayla nodded. But Talia is in the east wing. Split up, Darian ordered. You get your kid. I will hold the roof together. Emperor, get your people to the lower levels. Thalin, tell the gunnery crews to stop shooting. Energy weapons just make the eels stronger. Use kinetics or percussion rounds only. You do not give orders to the Emperor, Thalin sputtered. Do it, Kyla shouted. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and sprinted out of the chamber, her armored boots clanking against the marble. Darian looked at the Emperor. Watch Mira, please. I will guard her with my life, Orion promised, drawing a heavy ceremonial blaster from his robes. No, Darian shook his head. She comes with me. She is my anchor. Without her, I cannot hold a shield that big. Darian ran Mira bouncing on his hip. He sprinted through the corridors of the Sky Temple, which were now chaotic scenes of panic. Courtiers in fine robes were screaming, running aimlessly. Guards were trying to maintain order. He burst into the central atrium. It was a massive open space, a botanical garden floating in the sky. In the center stood a great tree with silver leaves. Above it, the crystal dome was cracking. A spiderweb of fractures was spreading rapidly. Outside, the face of a void eel pressed against the glass. It had no eyes, only a maw of swirling light. It opened its mouth and shrieked a sound, felt in the teeth, rather than heard. Crack. A shard of crystal, the size of a transport skiff, fell from the ceiling, crashing into the garden below. Atmosphere began to howl, sucking leaves and debris upward. Jonas! Darian yelled into his combead, which he had surprisingly retained. Jonas, tell me you are on this station. I am here, Jonas Pike's voice crackled in his ear, breathless and panicked. I am in the hangar I was trying to steal. Borrow some fuel cells. This place is falling apart, Darian. Why do all your vacations end in structural failure? Get to the engineering deck, Darian shouted, dodging a falling piece of masonry. The main reactor is cycling. I need you to override the safety protocols and dump the charge. The eels are feeding on the reactor hum. Dump the charge. That will kill the gravity. Just do it. 5 minutes. Darian reached the center of the atrium. The wind was ferocious now, pulling at his clothes. He set Mira down behind the thick trunk of the silver tree. Mira, listen to me, Darian shouted over the wind. I need you to stay here. Hold your shield. Draw the dragons. Okay, Mira nodded, her face pale but determined. She sat down and pulled her knees to her chest. Darian stepped out into the open. He looked up at the shattering dome. The void eel was coming through. Okay, you oversized glowworm, Darian muttered. Let us see who is hungrier. He didn't plant his feet this time. He didn't have the luxury of a stable stance. He reached deep past the fear, past the fatigue, into the well of guilt and power that sat in his gut. He remembered the market. He remembered his wife. He remembered the promise. He thrust his hands upward. Expand. The warden energy erupted from him, not as a dome, but as a pillar. It shot upward, slamming into the breach in the ceiling. It spread out, filling the cracks, replacing the glass with pure hexagonal force. The void eel slammed into the barrier. Darian buckled his knees, hitting the floor. It felt like a mountain had been dropped on his shoulders. General, Darian gritted out. Any time now. On the roof of the Sky Temple outside the atmosphere, Kyla Sarah was fighting a war in zero gravity. She had engaged her suit's mag boots, clinging to the hull of the station. Talia was strapped to her back in an emergency harness. The child was silent, staring wide-eyed at the swarm of monsters. Kayla wielded a physical spear, an ancient weapon of the Illyri forged from star metal. Energy weapons were useless here. She had to fight like her ancestors. A smaller eel lunged at her. Kayla sidestepped, driving the spear into the creature's gill slits. It exploded into a cloud of static. "Hold on, Talia!" Kayla shouted. She looked down through the translucent crystal of the dome. She saw Darian inside a tiny figure kneeling under the weight of the massive barrier. He was glowing so brightly, it hurt to look at him. He was literally holding the sky up. "He is strong," Talia said, her voice vibrating through Kayla's suit comms. "He is stubborn," Kayla corrected. She tapped her comms. "All units focus fire on the alpha eel. The one hammering the central dome. Use grappling harpoons, drag it off." A squad of Illyri fighters swooped in, firing heavy metallic harpoons attached to durasteel cables. They slammed into the massive void eel, hooking into its hide. The fighters banked hard engines, screaming, trying to pull the beast away from Darian's shield. Inside the atrium, Darian screamed. The pressure was tearing him apart. Blood was streaming from his nose, dripping onto his white tunic. The world was narrowing down to a single point of pain. "I cannot!" His arms trembled. The shield flickered. A gap opened. The wind howled in. A smaller void eel, no bigger than a snake, slipped through the crack. It zipped down, attracted to the nearest energy source. It ignored Darian. It went for the tree. It went for Mira. No, Darian tried to drop the shield to grab it, but if he did, the Alpha would crush them all. Mira looked up. The energy snake hissed, rearing back to strike. But Mira did not scream. She did not raise her wooden shield to block. She stood up. She reached out her hand. "It is okay," Mira whispered. "You are just scared." Darian watched, frozen in horror, as the creature paused. It hovered inches from Mira's face. Mira's eyes were glowing, not the white of a warden, but a soft, pulsing blue. Suddenly, the doors to the atrium burst open. Talia broke free from her mother's grip. Kayla had just entered from the airlock and ran toward Mira. "Talia, stop!" Kayla screamed. Talia reached Mira. She grabbed Mira's hand. The moment their skin touched, a pulse of energy rippled out. It was not a barrier. It was not a weapon. It was a wave of pure emotion. Calm, safety, home. The energy snake stopped hissing. It cooed, rubbing its head against Mira's palm like a cat. Above them, the alpha eel stopped thrashing against Darian's shield. It hovered, confused. The aggression drained from the swarm. The chaotic energy storm outside began to organize, turning from a violent vortex into a gentle, flowing current. "Jonas now!" Darian shouted, his voice cracking. "Cycling the reactor!" Jonas's voice screamed over the comms. "Gravity is going bye-bye in 3, 2, 1. The artificial gravity cut out. Darian, Mira, Talia, Kayla. The tree, the debris, everything floated." The sudden loss of the reactor's hum, the food source combined with the calming wave from the girls, broke the frenzy. The void eels no longer agitated, detached from the station. They turned and swam back into the depths of the nebula, following the natural currents. Darian let the shield drop. He floated in the air, weightless. He saw Kayla pushing off a wall, swimming through the air toward him. He saw Mira and Talia holding hands, spinning slowly near the silver tree, the small energy snake, coiling harmlessly around Mira's arm before fading away. Darian closed his eyes. "I hate space," he muttered. Then gravity returned with a bone-jarring slam. 2 hours later, the Sky Temple was secure. The breaches were sealed with emergency foam. The wounded were being treated. They stood in the hangar bay, a cavernous space that smelled of ozone and burnt metal. Jonas Pike was frantically welding a plate onto the side of a ship that looked like a dumpster had mated with a fighter jet. "It is called the Rusty Kestrel," Jonas said defensively, catching Darian's skeptical look. "And she flies, usually." Darian stood by the boarding ramp, his arm in a sling. He wore a heavy flight jacket over his ruined tunic. Mira was beside him, clutching her shield. Kayla approached them. She was back in her uniform, but she carried a small duffel bag. Behind her stood a young Illyri soldier, looking nervous. "This is Rivain," Kayla said, gesturing to the youth. "He is my best tracker, and he is disposable enough that the Council will not miss him if he disappears on a secret mission." "I can hear you, General," Rivain mumbled. "You are coming?" Darian asked Kayla. "The Emperor has made his decree public," Kayla said, her face impassive. "We are betrothed. Where you go, I go. Besides, if I stay here, the Council will bury me in meetings about the damage to the atrium. I prefer hunting." She looked at the ship. "Is it sanitary?" "No," Jonas yelled from the welding torch. "It will do," Kayla sighed. She looked at Darian. "So, Groom, what is the plan?" Darian looked at the star chart projected on his wrist computer. He traced a line to a sector of space that was dark and empty on most maps. "We go to the source," Darian said. Serath mentioned a place. "The Canyon of Whispers. It is an old warden graveyard. If he is building an army of blades, that is where he will be." "That is in the Badlands," Rivain said, his eyes widening. "No ships fly there. The magnetic interference creates ghosts." "Good," Darian said, hoisting his bag. "I like ghosts. They do not talk as much as emperors." He looked down at Mira and Talia. The two girls were whispering conspiratorially, pointing at Jonas's welding sparks. "You two," Dorian called out. "On the ship. Buckle up, and Mira, no magic tricks with space eels unless I say so." "Yes, Dad," Mira chirped. "Yes, Mr. Dorian," Talia added politely. Kayla watched them board. She turned to Dorian. The gap between them was still there, cultural, biological, personal. But it was smaller than it had been this morning. "You held the sky," Kayla said quietly. "I held the ceiling," Darian corrected. "There is a difference." "Not to them," she nodded toward the girls. "We have a deal, Holt. We find Serath. We kill him. We free the children." "And then we get divorced," Darian reminded her. "Right," Kayla said. "And then we get divorced." She walked up the ramp, her spine straight, a general marching into battle. Darian watched her go. He touched the spot on his chest, where the shield had strained him the most. He had a feeling that divorcing Kayla Sarah was going to be significantly harder than fighting 21 magical swords. "Hey, are we saving the galaxy or what?" Jonas shouted from the cockpit. "Fuel is burning." Darian Holt grinned, a real grin this time, sharp and dangerous. "Yeah," Darian said to the empty hangar. "Let us go save the galaxy." He walked up the ramp, and the airlock hissed shut behind him, sealing the unlikely family inside, as the rusty Kestrel fired its thrusters and blasted off into the uncaring void. The interior of the rusty Kestrel smelled of recycled air ozone, and something that Jonas Pike insisted was herbal tea, but Darian suspected was engine coolant. The ship was not built for comfort. It was a scavenger vessel designed for short hops between debris fields, not for hauling an imperial general, her royal daughter, a retired mercenary, and a child who drew dragons on shields. The main hold had become a strange microcosm of a family that did not quite fit together. "Posture, Talia," Kayla Sarah commanded. She sat on a cargo crate, her back rigid, polishing her energy pike with a cloth that looked suspiciously like one of Jonas's grease rags. "A warrior does not slouch even in transit." Talia, sitting cross-legged on the floor opposite Mira, straightened her spine instantly. "Yes, Mother." "Oh, give it a rest, General," Darian groaned from the pilot's bunk where he was trying to nap. He had one arm thrown over his eyes. "We are in hyperspace. The only thing attacking us is boredom and Jonas's playlist." "Discipline is a muscle," Kayla countered, without looking up. "It atrophies if not exercised." "My dad says muscles need naps to grow big," Mira chirped. She was teaching Talia a game that involved a deck of cards, missing 3 queens and a handful of plastic washers. "Do you have any trees, Talia?" Talia looked at her hand of cards with intense tactical scrutiny. I do not. However, I have a surplus of sevens. Is this advantageous? Go fish, Mira giggled. I do not understand the aquatic reference. Talia frowned, but she picked a card from the pile. In the cockpit, Jonas Pike spun his chair around to face the young Illyri tracker, Rivian. Rivian looked like he was vibrating with anxiety, clutching his pulse rifle, as if the vacuum of space might break in at any moment. Relax, kid, Jonas said, propping his boots up on the console. You are making me nervous, and I fly a ship held together by duct tape and prayer. You want some tea? It tastes like mint and despair. I am on duty, Rivian said stiffly. Protecting the general. From what, the dust bunnies? Jonas laughed. Look at them. He gestured to the main hold. It is like a bad sitcom. The uptight mom, the lazy dad, and the two kids plotting world domination. Darian sat up, rubbing his face. He watched the girls. Talia was slowly losing her rigid Illyri demeanor. She was leaning forward, her violet eyes wide, as Mira explained the complex made-up rules of Go Fish. It was the first time Darian had seen the general's daughter look like a child rather than a miniature soldier. We are approaching the coordinates, Darian said, his voice dropping the playful tone. Warden Canyon, or what is left of it. Kella stopped polishing her weapon. The atmosphere in the ship shifted instantly. The playfulness evaporated. Prepare for descent, Kella ordered. The landing was rough. Jonas brought the Kestrel down in a swirl of red dust and howling wind. The Badlands of Hystara were a scar on the planet's surface, a jagged network of canyons where the magnetic field was so erratic that compasses spun like tops and sensors showed ghosts. When the ramp lowered, the wind hit them like a physical blow. It screamed through the rock formations, carrying the sound of 1,000 flutes played off-key. Darian stepped out first, his hand hovering near the heavy blaster on his hip. He wore a dusty, long coat over his armor, the collar turned up against the grit. Stay close, Darian shouted over the wind. The group moved into the canyon. The walls rose 300 meters on either side, carved from sandstone that bled crimson in the fading light of the twin suns. This place, Kaela said, walking beside him. She scanned the ridges with her golden eyes. It feels heavy. It is a graveyard, Darian muttered. The Order used to train here, before the Purge. They walked for 2 kilometers until the canyon widened into a natural amphitheater. Here, the history of the Wardens was etched into the stone. Massive statues, half eroded by centuries of sandstorms, stood vigil along the walls. They depicted robed figures with arms outstretched, creating barriers between cowering civilians and vague, monstrous shapes. Mira and Talia stopped in front of a low relief carving near the ground. It showed a warden shielding a group of children. Above the warden, 21 swords hung in the air, points down. Look, Mira whispered, tracing the stone swords. The blades. They look like they are protecting the kids, Talia observed, tilting her head. But Sarath uses them to hunt us. Darian stared at the carving. A cold shiver that had nothing to do with the wind crawled up his spine. That carving is wrong. The blades were never meant to hang over us. They were meant to face outward. History is often rewritten by the victors, Kella said softly, or the survivors. As Mira touched the stone, a faint, pulsing light traveled through the eroded grooves. Talia reached out and placed her hand next to Mira's. The light intensified, turning from a dull white to a soft, resonant violet. The stone seemed to hum. Don't touch that, Darian snapped, perhaps too harshly. Both girls jumped back. It felt warm, Mira said, looking hurt. It is old tech, Darian said, trying to steady his voice. Old magic. We do not know when it will wake up. Keep moving. They set up camp in a sheltered alcove, as the suns dipped below the horizon, plunging the canyon into a deep, purple twilight. Jonas and Rivain took the first watch at the canyon mouth. Darian sat by the small chemical fire, staring into the blue flames. He was polishing his own weapon now, a repetitive motion that usually calmed him. Tonight, it did not work. Kella sat down opposite him. She had removed her heavy shoulder plates, looking slightly more human, though the bioluminescent patterns on her skin glowed brighter in the dark. "You are afraid," Kella stated. It was not an accusation, just an observation. "I am cautious," Darian corrected. "There is a difference." "You are terrified," Kayla insisted. "I can see it in your hands. You have checked the safety on that blaster 5 times in 1 minute." Darian stopped. He set the gun down. "This place brings back memories I thought I had buried." "Tell me," Kella said. "If we are to fight the man who trained you, I need to know what broke you, Darian." Darian looked at the fire. He looked at the sleeping forms of Mira and Talia, huddled together under a thermal blanket a few meters away. "I was not just a warden," Darian began, his voice rasping. "I was the prodigy. Sarath, he was not just my master. He was like a father. He taught me that the shield is an extension of the will. If you doubt, the shield fails. If you fear, the shield cracks." He picked up a handful of red sand and let it slip through his fingers. "We were stationed on the colony of Oryx, a peacekeeping mission. My wife, Alara, was a combat medic. She was not a warden, but she was braver than any of us." Kaela remained silent, her eyes fixed on his face. "The attack came at night. Not blades, just raiders. Hundreds of them. I held the line. I held the dome over the medical tent. Alara was inside treating the wounded. I held it for 6 hours." Darian's jaw tightened. "But I got tired. It is as simple as that. I am human." My focus slipped. Just for a second. A mortar shell got through. It did not kill everyone. Just the people in the left wing of the tent. He looked up at Kyla, his eyes hollow. Alara was in the left wing. She died because I blinked. Because I was weak. "And Sarath?" Kala asked softly. "He arrived 10 minutes later. He saw the bodies. He saw Alara. He looked at me, and he did not see a grieving husband. He saw a failed tool. He told me that emotion was the crack in the armor. He said that to be perfect, a warden must have nothing to lose. So I left. I took Mira, who was just a baby, and I ran. I figured if I never shielded anyone again, I could never fail them." The silence stretched between them, heavy with the ghosts of the past. "My husband was named Valen," Kayla said. Her voice was steady, but it carried a tremor of old pain. "He was a diplomat. He believed that words could solve what swords could not." She looked at her hands, the metallic skin shimmering. "He went to negotiate a ceasefire in the Rim. I insisted on sending a full guard, but he refused. He said it would show a lack of trust. So I let him go. I respected his choice." She closed her hand into a fist. "They sent his body back in pieces. A message to the Empire. I did not fail in battle, Darian. I failed because I listened to my heart instead of my tactical instinct. I failed because I loved him enough to let him take a risk." Darian looked at her. For the first time, he did not see the alien general. He saw a woman who carried the same stone in her chest that he did. "We are quite a pair," Darian gave a humorless laugh. "The shield that broke and the sword that hesitated." "Perhaps," Kayla said, reaching across the fire. She did not touch him, but her hand hovered near his. "Or perhaps we are the only 2 people who understand exactly what is at stake. We do not fight because we are perfect, Darian. We fight because we know the cost of losing." Darian looked at her hand. He felt a strange warmth, a connection that went deeper than the groom title the Emperor had forced on him. "I will not let them take the girls," Darian said. "I promise you that." "I know," Kyla said. Snap. The sound of a twig breaking echoed like a gunshot in the canyon. Darian was on his feet instantly, blaster raised. Kayla had her pike in hand before the echo faded. "Jonas!" Darian called out to the sentry post. Silence. "Revian!" Kayla barked. A figure stumbled out of the darkness from the direction of the canyon mouth. It was Rivan. He collapsed onto the sand, groaning. Jonas was behind him, dragging him, looking pale. "We got company!" Jonas shouted, his voice cracking. "Big, glowing, floaty company." On the high ridge of the canyon overlooking their campsite, a silhouette appeared against the stars. It was tall, draped in tattered robes that flowed in the wind. Around it, 21 points of violet light ignited. The swords, the 21 blades. They did not hang idly. They pointed downward, humming with a sound that made Darian's teeth ache. The figure stepped off the ledge. He did not fall. He descended slowly, as if walking on invisible stairs. He landed 20 meters from the fire, the sand barely shifting beneath his boots. He reached up and pulled down his hood. The face was older than Darian remembered. The skin was scarred, and the eyes were gone, replaced by burning orbs of violet energy. But the structure was undeniable. The sharp nose, the thin lips that had once offered praise and criticism in equal measure. "Master," Darian whispered. "Student," Sarath replied. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "Or should I say deserter?" Kyla stepped forward, positioning herself between the girls and the threat. "Sarath Kale, you are under arrest for treason against the Aeliri Dominion and crimes against the natural order," Sarath laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "The Dominion, a crumbling house built on the bones of giants. And you, General Sarah, you cling to your honor like a drowning man clings to a stone." He turned his burning gaze back to Darian. The 21 blades swirled around him like a school of predatory fish. "You look tired, Darian," Sarath said. 5 years of hiding. 5 years of pretending you are just a man with a gun. But you can feel it, can you not? The hum, the connection." "I feel nothing for you," Darian spat. "You are dead. You died on Oryx." "The weak man I was died on Oryx," Sarath corrected. "When I saw what failure cost us, I understood. The shield cannot be passive, Darian. It cannot just sit there and wait to be broken. The shield must bite. It must punish." He gestured to the floating swords. "These were once tools of defense. Passive. Weak. I have forged them into something new. Something that seeks out the threat and extinguishes it before it can strike." "You are killing children," Darian shouted. "How is that defense?" "Children are chaos," Sarath roared, his composure cracking. "They are unpredictable. They are emotional. They are the cracks in the armor. But these two," he pointed a withered finger at Mira and Talia, who were standing behind Kyla, wide-eyed. "These two are different. I felt the resonance at the market. They are not just conduits. They are amplifiers. With their life force, I can stabilize the blades. I can create a shield that covers not just a tent, Darian, but a world. A shield that no mortar shell, no raider, no army can ever penetrate. No one will ever have to mourn again, because no one will ever be able to die." "You are insane," Jonas yelled from behind a rock. "That is the plot of a bad holofilm." "Silence, fool," Sarath flicked his hand. One of the blades detached from the circle and shot toward Jonas. "Darian!" Kayla screamed. Darian did not think. He moved. He threw his left arm out. The Warden brand flared white-hot. Shield. A hexagonal barrier materialized in front of Jonas, just as the violet sword struck. Clang. The impact sent a shockwave through the canyon. The sword ricocheted off, returning to Sarath's circle. "Good," Sarath smiled. "Your reflexes are still sharp, but your resolve is soft." He raised both hands. All 21 swords pointed at the group. "Let us see if you can hold the sky again, Darian Holt. Lesson 1. The Deluge." Sarath brought his hands down. The blades descended like rain. "Formation Alpha," Kayla shouted. "Darian, hold the center. I will take the perimeter." Darian dropped to one knee in the center of the camp. He threw both arms up, expanding his will. A massive golden dome erupted, covering the entire campsite: Mira, Talia, Jonas, Rivan, and himself. Kayla did not stay inside. With a battle cry, she engaged her jet boots and launched herself out of the dome just before it sealed. "Kayla!" Darian shouted. "I cannot fight from a cage," she yelled back. She was a whirlwind of silver and blue light. Her pike spun, deflecting the blades that hammered against Darian's shield. She moved with impossible speed, dancing between the strikes, trying to close the distance to Sarath. Inside the dome, the noise was deafening. Every time a blade hit the shield, Darian grunted, his body absorbing the kinetic impact. Thud, thud, thud. "Dad," Mira cried, clutching his leg. "I have got you!" Darian gritted out, sweat stinging his eyes. "I am not going anywhere." Jonas was firing his blaster through the shield. Warden barriers were one way for ballistics, but the bolts harmlessly dissipated against Sarath's personal energy field. "He is invincible," Jonas panicked. "No," Talia said, her voice strange. She was standing next to Darian, staring at the swords. "He is hurting. The swords, they are screaming." Outside, Kayla reached Sarath. She thrust her pike at his chest. Sarath did not even dodge. He caught the energy pike with his bare hand. The violet energy of his skin flared, neutralizing her weapon. "Pathetic," Sarath sneered. He backhanded her. The blow was enhanced by telekinetic force. Kayla was thrown backward, crashing into the canyon wall. She slid down, leaving a streak of blue blood on the red rock. "Mother!" Talia screamed. Darian's focus wavered. The shield flickered. Sarath saw the opening. Lesson 2. Sacrifice. He twitched his finger. One of the blades, sharper and brighter than the rest, broke off from the assault on Kala. It looped high into the air and dove straight down. It was not aiming for Darian. It was aiming for the gap in the shield's frequency, caused by his distraction. It was aiming for Mira. Darian saw it coming. The trajectory was perfect. It would bypass the main hard light barrier and strike the soft target. His instinct, the father's instinct, screamed at him to drop the shield and throw his body over his child, to tackle her, to be a physical wall. He started to move. He started to lower his arms. "Don't you dare drop that shield! Holt!" Kayla's voice rang out, weak but fierce. She was struggling to stand by the wall. "Trust the tech. Trust yourself." Darian froze. If he dropped the shield to tackle Mira, the other 20 swords would butcher everyone else, including Talia, including Jonas. He had to trust. He had to believe that his will was strong enough to stop the one blade that mattered. He screamed a primal sound of defiance. He did not drop the shield. He poured everything he had, every ounce of love for Mira, every ounce of grief for Alara, into that one patch of hexagonal light above his daughter's head. Harden. The blade struck. The impact was blinding. Darian felt his radius bone fracture. He fell to his hands and knees, vomiting bile from the psychic feedback. But the blade did not pierce. It stopped. It hovered 3 inches above Mira's head, caught in the densest patch of energy Darian had ever conjured. It was vibrating, drilling, trying to break through. "Help him!" Talia yelled. Talia grabbed Mira's hand. Mira grabbed the handle of her wooden shield, which she was holding up toward the sword. "Go away!" Mira shouted at the sword. "You are being mean!" A pulse of energy, cyan and violet mixed, erupted from the 2 girls. It flowed up through Darian's faltering barrier. It hit the blade. The sword did not break. It stalled. The violet fire surrounding it turned a soft, confused white. It stopped drilling. It hung there, as if sudden doubt had seized the metal itself. Sarath, standing 20 meters away, stumbled. He clutched his chest. What is this interference?" Kayla saw her chance. She ignored her broken ribs. She ignited her boot thrusters and launched herself like a missile. Not at Sarath, he was too guarded, but at the hovering sword that threatened the girls. She hit it with a kinetic shoulder charge, putting her entire armored weight behind the blow. "Get away from my family!" The impact knocked the confused blade spinning away. It crashed into the sand, its light flickering out. Sarath roared in frustration. The connection was disrupted. The other 20 blades wavered, their formation breaking. He looked at the girls, then at Darian, who was bleeding from the nose, but still holding the main dome. He realized he could not win this brute force engagement, not while the children were dampening his control over the weapons. "Remarkable," Sarath whispered, his anger replaced by a chilling fascination. "The resonance, it is not just power. It is empathy. You have weaponized love, Darian. How inefficient." He raised his hands, and the 20 remaining blades shot back to him, forming a defensive wingspan. "You have passed the first test," Sarath announced, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "But this ground is too shallow for the final forging. If you want to save them, if you want to understand the true nature of the shield." He began to float backward, fading into the shadows of the canyon. "Come to the Silent Valley. Come to where Alara died. Come home, Darian. We will finish this where it began." With a flash of violet light, he was gone. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Darian let the shield drop. He collapsed onto the sand, his vision graying out. "Dad!" Mira was on him instantly, her small hands patting his face. "I am okay," Darian wheezed, though he definitely was not. "Just need a minute." Kayla limped over. She was clutching her side, her armor dented and scorched. She knelt beside him. She did not say anything tactical. She did not give a status report. She reached into her medical pouch, pulled out a stim injector, and jammed it into Darian's neck. "Ow!" Darian yelped, the sudden rush of adrenaline clearing his head. "Warning next time." "That was the warning," Kayla muttered. She sat back on her heels, grimacing. "You held it. You did not break." "You told me not to," Darian said, sitting up and rubbing his arm. "If you had not yelled, I would have tackled her, and we would all be dead." "I know," Kayla said. She looked at Mira and Talia, who were hugging each other, crying silently. "We are a good team, Holt. Terrible at dinner parties, perhaps, but good at not dying." "I will take it," Darian managed a weak smile. Jonas crawled out from behind his rock, dusting off his flight suit. "Okay. That was terrifying. Can we go back to the ship? I think I wet myself. Just a little. A tactical release of fluids." "We cannot go back," Darian said, struggling to his feet. "He is going to the Silent Valley. My old home." "We need to heal first," Kayla ordered. "Riven found a cave system 100 meters back. There are thermal springs. We rest. We repair. Then we hunt." They moved the camp to the cave. It was a deep fissure in the rock fed by an underground aquifer. The water glowed with faint, bioluminescent algae, casting a soothing teal light on the walls. Darian sat by the water's edge, stripping off his heavy armor. His torso was a map of bruises, old and new. Kayla sat nearby, letting Talia clean the wound on her forehead. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a raw, exposed vulnerability. Kayla walked over to Darian. She had a roll of nanite bandages. "Turn around," Darian obliged. He felt her cool fingers on his back, applying the bandages to the burns caused by the neural feedback of the shield. "He was your father figure," Kayla said quietly. "Yes." "And he is insane." "Yes." "It is not your fault," Kayla said. She pressed the bandage down firmly. "What happened to Alara? What happened to him? You carried that guilt for 5 years. It is time to put it down, Darian. It is too heavy for one man to carry while holding a shield." Darian turned to face her. They were close. He could smell the ozone on her skin and the faint scent of desert flowers. "I am scared," Darian admitted, the words barely a whisper. "Returning to the valley is like walking back into the fire." "Then do not walk alone," Kayla said. She took his hand. Her grip was strong, calloused, a warrior's hand. "We go together. No one runs." It was the same phrase she had used before, but this time, it felt like a vow. A real one. Not one spoken in front of an emperor, but one whispered in a dark cave at the end of the world. "Hey, Dad, look at this," Mira's voice echoed from the back of the cave. Darian and Kaela broke apart, clearing their throats. They walked to where the girls were standing by the back wall of the cavern. Rivayan was holding a glow rod up to the stone. "It is writing," Rivayan said. "Old Aleri script, and human coordinates." Darian squinted at the wall. The carving was crude, hasty. But the diagram was clear. It showed the 21 blades, but it showed them in a circle points outward, creating a net. And in the center, it showed a specific geometric pattern. "That is a schematic," Jonas said, peering over Darian's shoulder. "It looks like a circuit diagram. But for what?" "For a reset," Kayla realized, her eyes widening. Thalen said the blades were corrupted. "This is the original instruction manual. This is how they were meant to be used." Darian traced the center of the diagram. It required 4 distinct energy inputs to lock the circuit. 2 large sources, 2 small sources. "A shield," Darian murmured. "A commander," Kayla added. "And 2 catalysts." Darian looked at Mira and Talia. He understood now. Sarath was trying to force the blades to work by torturing the energy out of the children. But the original design required willing participants. It required a family unit, not necessarily of blood, but of bond. "We can fix them," Darian said, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "We do not have to destroy the blades. We can heal them, just like we have to heal ourselves." Kayla looked at him, and a fierce smile touched her lips. "Then, let us go to your valley, Darian Holt, and let us show your master what a real warden looks like." Outside, the wind howled, but inside the cave, the fear had receded, replaced by a cold, hard determination. They rested that night not as fugitives, but as an army of 5, waiting for the dawn to bring the final storm. The bioluminescent moss on the cavern ceiling pulsed with a slow, rhythmic teal light, casting shifting shadows over the impromptu infirmary. The air smelled of damp stone ozone and the antiseptic tang of Aleri medical gel. Darian Holt lay on a thermal blanket near the edge of the healing spring. He was unconscious, his face pale beneath the grime and dried blood. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Kyla Sarah knelt beside him, holding a canteen of water. For a woman who could command a fleet of starships with a single word, she looked utterly defeated by the task of nursing one stubborn human. "Open your mouth, Holt," she muttered, tilting the canteen toward his lips. "That is an order." Darian did not respond. Water trickled down his chin and soaked into his collar. "Inefficient," Kayla hissed at herself. She grabbed a cloth and dabbed at the spill with forceful, almost aggressive movements. "Why must you have such a difficult jaw structure?" Talia, sitting cross-legged on the other side of Darian, watched her mother with wide violet eyes. She held a fresh bandage in her small hands, ready to deploy it like a tactical reserve. "Mother, you are poking him in the eye," Talia observed quietly. "I am checking his pupil response," Kayla lied, smoothly adjusting her grip. "And he is not cooperating," Darian groaned, his eyelids fluttering. "Is that an angel?" He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep and painkillers. "Or did a tank run over my face?" "It was a tank," Kayla said, relief washing over her face so intensely she had to look away to hide it. "A very large, very angry tank named Sarath." Darian cracked one eye open. He saw Kayla hovering over him, her armor unbuckled at the shoulders, her hair falling out of its strict braid. "You look terrible, General," Darian whispered, a ghost of a grin touching his lips. "Did you lose a fight with a hairbrush?" "I am maintaining optimal combat readiness," Kayla retorted, though her hands were shaking slightly as she offered him the water again. "Drink. You lost 2 pints of blood holding that shield. If you die of dehydration, I will write idiot on your tombstone." Darian took a sip, coughing slightly. Charming. Remind me to hire you for children's parties. Across the cavern, near a cluster of stalagmites that looked like melted wax, Mira and Talia retreated to give the adults space. They sat on a flat rock, their legs swinging in unison. Mira was drawing in the dust with a stick. She drew a stick figure with a shield and another stick figure with a sword. Then, she drew a line between them. I am scared, Mira whispered, not looking up. Talia stopped swinging her legs. Scared of Serath? No, Mira shook her head. Scared of my dad. When he wakes up properly, when he can walk, I think he is going to make me get on the ship with Jonas and send me away. He always says he will run away to keep me safe. But if he runs away this time, he will be alone. Talia picked up a pebble and threw it into the dark water of the spring. Plop. My mother is the same, Talia confessed. She says Talia stay in the bunker. Talia wait on the flagship. She thinks if she pushes me away, the war cannot touch me. But she just makes herself lonely. And when she is lonely, she fights harder, and she gets hurt more. Mira looked at Talia. We cannot let them do it. We have to make them stick together, like glue. Super glue, Talia nodded solemnly. Industrial-grade adhesive. We need a plan, Mira said, her eyes narrowing in concentration. We need to make them say the truth. Grown-ups never say the truth unless you trick them. Back at the thermal spring, Darian tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The world spun in a sickening lurch. Kaela's hand was on his shoulder, instantly pushing him back down. Stay down, she commanded. Your neural pathways are still reknitting. You took a psychic blow meant to shatter a tank. I am fine, Darian grunted, lying back. Just need a minute. We have to move. Serath is going to the valley. We know, Kaela said. Jonas and Rivain are prepping the ship. But we are not leaving until you can stand without falling over. She sat back on her heels, looking at him. The cave light reflected in her golden eyes, softening the sharp angles of her face. Why did you do it? She asked suddenly. Do what? You dropped the main dome. You focused everything on that one small shield over Mira. You left yourself wide open. If Serath had thrown a second blade... He didn't, Darian cut her off. He wanted to break me. He wanted to break the weak link. You risked the mission, Kaela said, but there was no bite in her tone. You risked the tactical advantage for one life. She is my daughter, Kaela, Darian said simply. There is no mission. There is no tactical advantage. There is just her. If she dies, the galaxy can burn for all I care. Kaela went silent. She looked down at her hands, hands that had held weapons since she was 12 years old, hands that had signed death warrants and peace treaties. I thought, Kaela started, then stopped. She took a breath. I thought you were just a mercenary. When my father declared you my groom, I was insulted. I thought you were a man who sold his loyalty to the highest bidder. She looked at him, her gaze intense and vulnerable. I was wrong. You are not a mercenary, Darian. You are a fanatic. You just worship a god named Mira. Darian chuckled, but it turned into a wince. Is that a compliment? It is a warning, Kaela said softly. Because I am starting to understand it. When I saw that blade coming down, I did not think about the Empire. I did not think about the 21 blades. I just thought if he fails, Talia dies. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. Her fingers were cool against his feverish skin. You matter to me, Darian Holt, she whispered, the confession seeming to surprise her as much as him. And not just because you are a shield generator with legs. I do not want you to die. Darian stared at her. His heart, which had been beating a steady retreat for 5 years, suddenly stumbled and held its ground. Well, Darian said, his voice husky, that makes 2 of us. I am quite fond of living, especially now that I have a general to yell at me. Before the moment could deepen, The sound of boots crunching on gravel broke the silence. Jonas and Rivon emerged from the deeper tunnels of the cave system, looking excited and dusty. "Hey, lovebirds!" Jonas shouted, his voice echoing painfully. "You need to see this. We found the instruction manual." Kyla snatched her hand back as if burned. Darian groaned. "Jonas, your timing is impeccable. Truly." "What did you find?" Kyla asked, snapping back into commander mode. Rivon held up a portable scanner. "It is a mural. Further back in the cave. It depicts the forging of the first blades. It matches the carvings in the canyon, but it has text, readable text." Jonas unrolled a digital scroll on his datapad. "Okay, get this. The 21 blades. They were not weapons of war. They were a perimeter defense system for nurseries during the Great Void War. They were programmed with a single directive: protect the innocent." "Protect?" Darian frowned, sitting up with effort. "Then, why do they attack us?" "Because Serath hacked the code," Jonas explained, waving his hands. "Or, well, the spiritual equivalent. The mural says the blades operate on an empathic loop. They reflect the emotion of the user. The original wardens used them with, wait for it, pure intent of guardianship. Basically love. But Serath, Rivon, continued grimly, is feeding them grief, rage, pain. He has inverted the loop. The blades think that to protect the children from the cruelty of the world, they must remove them from it." "He thinks death is the ultimate safety," Darian realized, a chill running through him. "He wants to kill them to save them." Suddenly, Darian's comm unit beeped. It was a priority channel override. Elder Thalin's holographic face flickered into existence above Darian's wrist. The connection was grainy, distorted by the canyon's magnetic interference. "General, Warden Holt," Thalin's voice crackled. "We have monitored a massive energy spike in the Silent Valley. Serath has begun the ritual." "We know," Kella said. "We know what he is doing." "Do you know why I agreed to the Emperor's decree?" Thalin asked, his old voice trembling. "Why did I supported this unorthodox union?" Darian narrowed his eyes. "To manipulate us. To bind you," Thalin corrected. "The Emperor knew. He knew the legends better than any of us. He knew that a broken warden and a grieving general could never stand against the blades alone, but a Family A unit, bound by life and blood and oath." Thalin paused. "The blades require a circuit, Darian, a shield to hold the space, a sword to defend the perimeter, and a heart to center the loop. The Emperor did not just want a political marriage. He wanted to build the only weapon capable of resetting the 21 blades. He gambled everything: his honor, his daughter, his granddaughter, in the hope that you two would stop fighting each other long enough to become that weapon." Darian looked at Kyla. The realization hit them both at the same time. The groom title was not just a legal shackle. It was a blueprint. "The old man is smarter than he looks," Darian muttered. "We have to go," Kayla said, standing up. She offered a hand to Darian. "Can you walk?" "For this." Darian took her hand and pulled himself up. He swayed, then steadied himself. "I can run." They gathered the group. Mira and Talia were waiting by the tunnel exit. "Dad," Mira stepped forward. She looked small in the cavern, clutching her wooden shield. "Are we going to the valley?" "Yes, sweetheart," Darian said gently. "We are going to stop the bad man." "Are you going to send me away?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. With Jonas to the ship, Darian opened his mouth to say yes. It was the sensible, safe, fatherly thing to do. Get to the ship, orbit until it is safe. But then he looked at Talia. He looked at Kayla. He remembered the mural. A circuit. "No," Darian said. Jonas dropped his wrench. "What, Darian, are you crazy? It is a war zone." "It is not a war," Darian said, looking at his daughter. "It is a rescue mission. And we need you, Mira. We need both of you." He knelt down, so he was eye level with the girls. The blades are confused. They are like angry dogs that have been kicked too many times. They need someone to tell them it is okay. Someone who knows how to be brave even when they are scared. He touched Mira's cheek. I cannot do that alone. I am too angry. Kayla is too soldiery. Hey, Kayla protested mildly. But you two, Darian smiled. You speak their language. Will you come with us? Will you help us fix them? Mira looked at Talia. Talia nodded, a fierce determination in her eyes. We go together, Mira said. Together, Talia echoed. Darian stood up. He turned to Kayla. You realize this is insane, Kayla said, checking the charge on her pike. Taking children into the eye of the storm. It is, Darian agreed. But running away has not worked for 5 years. Maybe it is time to try standing still. Kayla looked at him. She took a step closer, invading his personal space. She reached out and adjusted the collar of his flight jacket, her fingers lingering on his chest. Darian Holt, she said, her voice low and fierce. If we survive this, if we reset the blades, do not think you can just dissolve this marriage and walk away. Darian raised an eyebrow. Is that a threat, General? It is a negotiation, Kayla said, her eyes locking onto him. I am finding that I have grown accustomed to your inefficiency. And your terrible jokes. And the way you look at my daughter. She took a breath. When we stand in that circle, I will not be standing there as the Emperor's daughter. And I will not be standing there because of a decree. I will be standing there because I choose you. As my partner. As my equal. As my shield. Darian felt his breath catch. This was it. The wall. The one he had built around his heart after Alara died. It didn't crumble. It just opened a gate. And I choose you, Darian whispered. As my sword. As well, I am still working on a metaphor for terrifyingly competent alien warrior queen. But I will get there. Kayla actually laughed. A real bright sound that echoed in the cave. Then let us go, she said. The valley awaits. They boarded the rusty kestrel one last time. The flight to the silent valley was short. The wind in the silent valley did not howl. It whispered. It moved through the skeletal remains of the petrified trees and the crumbled masonry of the settlement, like a ghost looking for a place to rest. Darian Holt stood at the edge of what had once been a perimeter fence. The metal posts were rusted, twisted into shapes that looked like agony, frozen in iron. Beyond the fence lay the ruins of his former life. He could see the foundation of the mess hall, where he had first met Alara. He could see the flattened earth where the training ring had been. And further back, near the curve of the river that had long since run dry, he saw the pile of rubble that had been their home. It looks smaller than I remember, Darian said, his voice barely audible over the wind. Kayla Sarah stood beside him. She did not look at the ruins. She looked at him. Her hand hovered near his elbow, not touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth of her armor. Memory expands the spaces where we were happy, Kayla said softly. And it shrinks the places where we were hurt. It is a survival mechanism. Is that a quote from the Illyri War Manual? Darian asked, forcing a dry chuckle. No, Kayla replied. It is something my husband wrote in his last letter. Darian looked at her then. The connection between them, forged in the healing cave and tempered by the journey, felt solid. It was no longer just a desperate alliance. It was a shared weight. Behind them, Mira and Talia walked hand in hand. Jonas Pike and Rivan brought up the rear, their weapons drawn, scanning the ridges. But there were no ambushers here. The silent valley was empty of life. The only thing living here was the storm. Above the center of the valley, the sky was a bruised purple. A vortex of light spiraled upward, twisting the clouds into a funnel. At the base of that funnel, hovering above a massive flat-topped rock, was Sarath Kale. He waited for them. We should keep moving, Darian said, adjusting the strap of his shield generator on his wrist. Before I lose the nerve. They picked their way through the debris. Every step Darien took was a navigation through a minefield of memories. Here was where he taught Mira to walk. Here was where Alara had planted a garden that never grew. When they reached the central clearing, the air pressure dropped so sharply that Darien's ears popped. The static electricity was intense. It made the hair on his arms stand up and caused Kyla's metallic skin to hum with a low frequency. Sarath floated 10 feet off the ground. He looked wretched. His robes were tattered, revealing a body that was wasting away, consumed by the very energy he wielded. But his eyes, those violet burning orbs, were bright with a terrifying clarity. Around him, the 21 blades orbited in a slow, hypnotic circle. They were not screaming now. They were silent, waiting. "You came," Sarath said. His voice was not loud, yet it echoed from every stone in the valley. "I knew you would. The circle always seeks to close itself." "End this, Sarath," Darien called out, stepping forward. He placed himself between the girls and the floating figure. "There is no army here, no invasion, just us." "Just us," Sarath repeated, a smile stretching his thin lips. "That is all that is required. The architect, the prodigy, and the catalysts." He lowered himself until his boots touched the stone. The 21 blades reoriented their points, aiming directly at Mira and Talia. "Look at them, Darien," Sarath said, gesturing to the girls. "So fragile, so full of potential pain. Do you remember holding Alara as she bled out? Do you remember the feeling of the shield failing, the absolute crushing weight of your own inadequacy?" Darien flinched. The words hit harder than any physical blow. "I can take that away," Sarath promised, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "Give me the children. Let me link them to the array. Their energy is pure. It is unbound by the cynicism of adulthood. With them, I can expand the Warden field to cover the entire sector." Sarath took a step forward, his hands open. "Imagine it, Darien. A world where no mortar shell ever lands. Where no child ever cries from a wound. Where death is obsolete because the shield never breaks. Is that not what you wanted? Is that not why you ran?" For a second, one terrifying second, Darien wavered. He looked at the ruin of his house. He imagined a world where Alara was still alive. He imagined a world where he never had to worry about Mira tripping and falling, let alone being shot. The temptation was a physical pull, a gravity well of grief. "Darien," Kayla's voice cut through the fog. It was sharp, clear, and commanding. She grabbed his hand. Her grip was iron. "A shield that never breaks is a wall," Kyla said, staring at Sarath, but speaking to Darien. "And a wall that surrounds a world is a prison. He is not offering protection. He is offering stasis. He wants to freeze the galaxy in amber, so he never has to feel loss again." She squeezed Darien's hand. "That is not life. Life is the risk. We fight to protect the living, not to forbid them from living." Darien took a breath. The image of the perfect world shattered. He looked at Sarath and saw only a lonely, broken old man terrified of the dark. "She is right," Darien said, his voice steadying. "You are not building a sanctuary, Master. You are building a tomb." Sarath's face twisted. The benevolence vanished, replaced by a snarl of rage. "Then you will die in the open air," Sarath roared. "If you will not give me the catalysts willingly, I will carve them out of you." He raised his hands. The 21 blades began to spin faster, whining with lethal intent. Suddenly, a boom echoed across the valley, the sound of atmospheric thrusters. Darien looked up. An Alari dropship, sleek and silver, pierced the cloud cover. It did not fire weapons. It descended rapidly, landing on the edge of the clearing with a spray of white dust. The ramp lowered and Emperor Orion Sera walked out. He was not dressed in his ceremonial robes. He wore field armor, scarred and dull. He was flanked by a squad of the Royal Guard, but they did not raise their weapons. They stood at attention, their heads bowed. "Father," Kaela whispered, "what are you doing here?" The Emperor walked toward them, ignoring Sarath, ignoring the deadly swords. He stopped 10 feet from Darian and Kayla. He looked at Mira and Talia, then knelt on one knee in the dirt. "I came to witness," the Emperor said, his voice thick with emotion. "And to confess." He looked up at Darian. "The decree," Orion said, "making you the groom, declaring this family unit. It was not law. It was not tradition. We figured that out," Darian said warily. "It was a strategy." "It was a prayer," the Emperor corrected. He stood up, looking at the spinning blades. "I knew the history. I knew that the 21 blades were not forged as weapons of war. They were the first defenders. They were created to stand guard over the nurseries during the scourge." He turned to Serath. "They were designed to face outward," the Emperor shouted at the madman. "They were designed to repel the darkness, not to police the light. You twisted them. You fed them your fear until they forgot their purpose." Serath laughed a high, jagged sound. "Purpose. Their purpose is to ensure survival, and survival requires control." "No," the Emperor said sadly. "Survival requires trust." He turned back to Darian and Kayla. "I forced you together because I believed that only a true family, a warden to hold the space, a general to defend the line, and innocent hearts to remind the metal of its nature could break Serath's hold. I gambled your lives on a theory. I am sorry. But looking at you now." He looked at the way Darian stood in front of Mira, the way Kyla flanked him, the way the two girls held hands. "I see that the gamble has paid off. You are the circuit. You are the reset." "Enough talk!" Serath screamed. "Kill them!" The 21 blades broke formation. They did not attack one by one this time. They surged forward, like a tidal wave of violet steel. "Formation!" Darian yelled. He did not need to explain. They had rehearsed this in the silence of their own hearts. Darian dropped to one knee. He did not raise his hands to the sky. He slammed them into the earth. Anchor. The warden's shield exploded outward. It was not a dome. It was a cylinder, a pillar of golden light that encompassed Darian, Kayla, Mira, and Talia. It shot upward, punching a hole through Serath's storm clouds. Kayla stepped to the edge of the light. She planted her feet. She spun her energy pike, the hum of the weapon harmonizing with Darian's shield. "Mira, Talia, now!" Kayla shouted. The two girls sat in the center of the pillar, back to back. They closed their eyes. They did not try to fight. They did not try to hide. They reached out. The 21 blades slammed into the shield. Crack. The sound was deafening. The ground beneath Darian buckled. Blood sprayed from his nose instantly. This was not a skirmish. This was the weight of a god pressing down on his spine. "Hold it, Darian!" Jonas screamed from the sidelines, firing uselessly at the swirling energy. "I am trying!" Darian gritted out. His vision blurred. Every impact of a sword felt like a sledgehammer to his ribs. Kayla was a blur of motion. As the blades tried to pierce the barrier, she struck them. She parried blows that would have leveled a tank. Her armor sparked and tore. A cut opened on her cheek, bleeding blue, but she did not step back. "You will not touch them." Kayla roared, driving her pike into a blade that had breached the outer layer. But Serath was relentless. "Suffer!" he shrieked, pouring his own life force into the assault. "Break! Why won't you break?" The shield began to fracture. Spiderwebs of white light appeared on the golden surface. Darian groaned, his arms trembling violently. He was failing, just like before, just like with Alara. No. He felt a small hand on his shoulder. It was Mira. She hadn't broken the circle. She had just reached out. "It is okay, Dad," Mira whispered. Her voice was not drowned out by the storm. It cut right through it, carried by the mental link. "You do not have to hold it alone. Tell them." "Tell them what?" Darian gasped. "Tell the swords about the pancakes," Mira said. Darian blinked, sweat stinging his eyes. "What?" "The burnt pancakes," Mira insisted. "The ones you made for my birthday, and we laughed. Tell them about that." Darian understood. It wasn't about power. It was about resonance. He closed his eyes. He stopped fighting the pressure and started pushing a memory into the field. He remembered the kitchen, the smoke, the blackened disk of dough, Mira's giggles, the feeling of absolute ridiculous joy in the middle of a hard life. Talia joined in. She projected a memory of Kayla reading a tactical map to her as a bedtime story, her voice soft and safe. The energy inside the cylinder changed. It shifted from the hard, brittle gold of resistance to a soft, fluid opalescence. The 21 blades paused in their assault. They hovered inches from the barrier vibrating. Sarath felt the shift. "No stop, ignore them. They are weak." He fired a bolt of pure violet lightning at the shield. But the blades did not let it pass. One of the swords, the lead blade that had nearly killed Mira in the market, turned. It rotated 180 degrees. Its point, which had been aiming at Darian's heart, now aimed outward, toward Sarath. Then another turned, and another. "What are you doing?" Sarath screamed, clawing at the air. "I am your master." "No," Talia's voice echoed, amplified by the array. "You are just sad, and you are mean. We are not afraid of you anymore." "And neither are they," Darian added, opening his eyes. He stood up. He did not drop the shield. He expanded it. "Push." Darian, Kayla, Mira, and Talia pushed together. Not a physical shove, but an emotional pulse of rejection. "Get out of our house." The 21 blades snapped into a new formation. They formed a perfect ring around the family points facing outward. They glowed with a blinding white light, the light of the original order. Sarath fired a final, desperate barrage of energy. The blades moved as one. They did not just block the attack, they absorbed it, spun it, and fired it back. A beam of pure white energy, guided by the collective will of the 21, shot across the clearing. It hit Sarath. He did not explode. There was no gore. The light simply washed over him. It stripped away the tattered robes. It stripped away the violet corruption. It stripped away the madness. For a moment, Sarath Kale hung in the air, suspended in the light. He looked young again. The scars on his face were gone. He looked down at Darian, and his eyes were clear, human brown, not burning violet. He looked at the shield, the perfect, unbreakable circle protecting the family. "Beautiful," Sarath whispered. He smiled, a genuine, tired smile of a man who is finally allowed to put down a heavy load. "Thank you," he mouthed. Then he shattered. His body dissolved into millions of particles of light, like dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. The wind caught them and carried them up into the funnel of the storm. The vortex collapsed. The dark clouds unraveled. The silence of the valley returned, but it was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The 21 blades did not fall. They shot upward, trailing tails of white fire. They ascended higher and higher until they punctured the atmosphere. They took their places in the orbit of Hastara, spacing themselves out perfectly around the planet. From the ground, they looked like a new ring of stars. "The shielded circle," the Emperor whispered, looking up with tears streaming down his face. "The prophecy is fulfilled." Darian sank to his knees. The adrenaline crash hit him like a freight train. "Dad," Mira tackled him. Talia joined the pile. Kayla fell to her knees beside them, wrapping her arms around the whole group. "We are alive," Kayla breathed, pressing her forehead against Darian's shoulder. "Inefficiently messy, ridiculously alive." "I told you," Darian wheezed, patting whatever head was closest. "Teamwork." Emperor Orion walked over. He looked at the huddled mass of human and Aleri royalty and commoner. He slowly unbuckled his sword belt and laid it on the ground. "I release you," the Emperor said formally. "The decree is fulfilled. The debt is paid. Darian Holt, Kaela Sarah, you are free. The marriage is annulled. You owe the throne nothing." Darian looked up. He looked at Kaela. Her face was streaked with blue blood and dirt, and she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Hey, General," Darian said. "You heard the man. You are free. You can go back to the palace, get a nice desk job." Kella looked at him. She looked at the girls, who were now busy inspecting Darian's nose for damage. "That sounds incredibly boring," Kella said. "Besides, I have realized something." "What is that?" "My daughter has terrible poker skills," Kella said, smoothing Talia's hair. "She needs someone to teach her how to bluff. And you are the only liar I trust." "Is that a proposal, General?" Darian grinned. "It is a tactical assessment, Warden," she replied, leaning in and kissing him. It tasted of dust and victory. Epilogue, 6 months later. The twin suns of the border world of Arim were setting, painting the sky in shades of tangerine and lavender. The air was warm, smelling of salt and spices. A small ceremony was taking place on the deck of a refurbished cruiser. It wasn't the rusty Kestrel. That ship had finally been retired to a scrap heap with full military honors, but a sturdy, wide-hulled vessel named the Aegis. Jonas Pike stood at the altar looking uncomfortable in a suit that was clearly too tight in the shoulders. He held a datapad with trembling hands. "By the power vested in me by being the only guy here with a captain's license," Jonas stammered. "And by the witness of the Emperor over there who is crying seriously. Your Majesty, do you need a tissue? I pronounce you husband and wife, or shield and sword." "Whatever you guys are calling it now," Darian Holt laughed. He wore a simple white tunic, no armor. He looked younger, the lines of constant worry around his eyes smoothed out. Kyla stood opposite him. She wore a dress of shifting Illyri silk that shimmered like water, though she still wore her combat boots underneath. "You may kiss the bride," Jonas said, throwing the datapad over his shoulder. Finally, Darian pulled Kyla close. The kiss was not desperate or fearful. It was slow, steady, and full of promise. Mira and Talia, standing as the guards of honor in matching ceremonial capes, which Mira had insisted on, threw handfuls of flower petals into the air. "You," Mira whispered loudly. "It is a biological imperative," Talia whispered back, though she was smiling. Emperor Orion, sitting in the front row, blew his nose loudly into a silk handkerchief. Elder Thalin patted his arm awkwardly. Later that evening, the party was in full swing. The deck was lit by string lights. Jonas was trying to teach the royal guard how to do a line dance with disastrous results. Darian leaned against the railing, looking up at the night sky. High above, faint but visible 21 stars glinted in a perfect circle. They were not just protecting Hystara anymore. They had expanded their orbit, becoming a navigational beacon for the entire sector. Kayla joined him, handing him a glass of wine. "Regrets?" she asked. "I regret letting Jonas pick the music," Darian said, wincing as a chaotic synth-pop track started playing. "Other than that, no." "The council is still asking when we will return to the capital," Kayla said, looking at the stars. "They want to give you a medal. Or a statue. Tell them to melt the metal down and buy school supplies," Darian said. "We have work to do here. There are a dozen border worlds with unstable rifts. And I promised Talia I would teach her how to fix a hyperdrive." "She is already better at it than you," Kayla noted. "Ouch. True, but ouch." Mira ran up to them breathless, holding her wooden shield, which now had a new drawing on it, a picture of 4 stick figures standing inside a circle of stars. "Dad, Mom," Mira chirped. "Talia says that the stars are watching us. Is that true?" Darian knelt down. He looked at the drawing. He looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then at the bright, watchful constellation above. "Yeah, kiddo," Darian said. "They are watching." "What if the bad men come back?" Mira asked, a sudden shadow crossing her face. "What if someone needs a shield and we are too far away?" Darian stood up. He put one arm around Mira and the other around Kyla. He looked out at the dark horizon where the galaxy waited with all its dangers and all its wonders. "Then we stand," Darian said, his voice firm and final. "Together. I won't run anymore." Kayla rested her head on his shoulder. Mira leaned against his leg. And high above the 21 blades pulsed, once a silent heartbeat of light in the infinite dark.